Hi everyone, this is Markku and welcome to the Growth Mindset Builder channel. And apologies, hour ago we had a webinar related to second brain, and for some reason I had two links in the message because I was sharing them through DMs and some of you were left out. So apologies for that, but now I will go through the main topics in brief and hopefully you'll find this useful. So I'm going to be looking at the camera, but basically the reason I wanted to give this webinar was because we talk a lot about the second brain as a concept. A lot of people have very strong opinions on what does it mean in practice. Should it be RAG? Should it be Obsidian? What's the right way to do it? And I basically said, okay, I'll pop the hood. I'll show what I have inside my second brain, and then maybe we can talk about it a little bit more concretely. But if you think of the second brain as a concept, I think that it's very important to have a personal view on it. And in the webinar, we went through kind of like understanding. We spent a lot of time on understanding what does it mean from a terminology perspective. And then I had some live demos. But if I think of my second brain as an extended thinking tool, it's not a notebook, it's a thinking infrastructure. First of all, we have to understand that we have our biological brains, we have our memories, we have our feelings, but then when we talk about the second brain, it's a digital extension of your thinking. So this is kind of like, first of all, I would say the biggest differentiator. Second brain is a digital extension. Well, how is it organized? There's different ways to think about it. But I've selected certain approaches which I will go through in this video. For me, my second brain is the Obsidian vault, but it's more than just a vault. It's also the tools, the workflows, the automations that are linked to it. But basically, when we talk about Obsidian, I don't know if you are familiar with it, but it's a note-taking tool. So basically, everything is Markdown, text, and quite simple to use. You can basically do whatever you do with writing here, but the point is that it's actually quite powerful to use for linking different concepts together, and that's why it's probably the reason it's so popular as a second brain infrastructure. If I think of like, how would I explain the second brain to someone who's not so digitally aware? First of all, many of them call it the digital garden. So basically, you don't just store files, you have living ideas that are linked, which grow, develop, get new insights. So it's basically something organic. And of course, our human's role is quite big in it. It's also an extended memory. We know that our biological brain is really good when it's working, but we also we can't memorize everything. So I think that as an extended memory, a second brain is quite useful. And of course, when it comes to very detailed information retrieval, we know that it's impossible for us to memorize everything. So in that context, I see my second brain as a very useful extended memory system. But because of AI, I've noticed that it's also becoming more and more my personal operating system, because I have different agents that are reading and using my AI driven second brain. Without it, I get a lot more context and right answers, etc. Whatever I'm doing, it's basically thinking like I am. I also have my digital twin, but I would say that without my second brain, all of my automated agentic workflows would be much more poor quality than with my second brain, because my brain understands the frameworks, the terminology, the methods, the priorities, my thinking style, my expertise, and also what I've been doing in different projects. So it's basically the foundational layer. Typically, the workflow, how I work with my brain, is that I either retrieve material from it when I need it by myself, just going in, finding the information, or with agents. But basically how I input the data is through a capture system, which is mostly, for me, it's audio. I speak a lot, converted it automatically into text, and then the system also knows how to place the content into the right structure. So basically, for example, if I'm in a project, I give a memo, it's converted to text. It automatically, my second brain knows that this goes under this client or under this project, and it gives it more context and also links it to historical data that has been there. So this is kind of like there's always a workflow behind it, and the more you do work with it, the more useful it becomes. And I have a huge repository of files. So basically I have over, I would say, some of my notes are over 20 years old. I've converted everything that I've typically written into Markdown text, but also because I want to maintain them, some of them are becoming more and more valuable each day, at least to me, because they're my second brain content. So basically, it's a place where your thinking compounds, amplifies, and that's kind of like the conceptual level. Then if you think of kind of like, what is it in detail? It's a file structure that contains a lot of Markdown files. And of course, then the automations and agents can use these files to create a better context when you're, for example, creating something new with AI. And the reason for me, basically, working on this has been very much because I really want to learn all the time. I want to grow and develop. And for me, I'm still awed that we're able to, as humans, to have our brains. And it's very, 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 it's a miracle, I would say. But then on the other hand, it's also, there's so many things in around us that are really interesting. And if you're someone who likes to hoard knowledge, which means to collect different bits of piece of information, you get lost quite soon. And that's why the second brain is a structure that helps. My vault, or my second brain, is actually, if you look at all of the data, the biggest one has about 130,000 files, 19,000 Markdown notes. I'm trying to trim them down, combine them, but basically it's structured in a way that it has an inbox, daily notes, project, products, areas of interest, clients. It has content, training related, knowledge related stuff, system related stuff, which is more like related to the system itself, media, archives, etc. So this is basically a file structure that is working. And one of the key elements is the frontmatter, the metadata. So basically, every file that I have has also metadata linked to it. And this is really important, that everything that I drop into my second brain, it's processed with updated metadata. And this is really important to keep it, to keep this in place, because this is the context that kind of like links everything together. So whether I'm working on client context, etc., it always has the metadata in place. And it can be sometimes quite, I would say, deep. So if I look at, for example, some of the metadata, for example, with in my vault, this is related to life skills. You can see that I do actually maintain a lot of information about the information, metadata, basically, related to each node, because this is kind of like how my brain can then retrieve and find the information again and create new meanings to it. So it's a very interesting flow, and everything in my second brain works that I have a capture area where I drop content into an inbox. It's read by an automation, then it's organized. I can do it manually, but typically I also have some daily workflows that places the content into the right projects, into the right product areas, into the right client areas, into the right areas of interest. And then it starts to build and compound. And I can always take it out and create new content, which I then also place in the vault in my brain. So basically, it's growing and growing and developing the whole time. I also have a lot of tools integrated into it. Claude Code, ClickUp, HeyGen for video creation, 11 Labs for audio, Gamma for slides, Firecrawl, MCP servers to different services. So this is kind of like the technology layer is also important, but basically it's a vault with folders and content. It becomes my personal operating system if you look at it from a perspective that if you kind of like think that once you plug in all your tools, all of your workflows into it, it is partially kind of like, I call it my OS. I have different versions, so markku-ai 10 is right now the latest version. But if you kind of like break it down, what does my vault contain? It has the structure, the folder structure based on the para model. It has all of my agent layers supporting it, Claude skills, chain workflows, Python automations, whatever I'm using. And then it has a context layer, which links everything together. So this is, I would say that I could live without the automations. I've done things manually. I know how to write a document. I know how to create a PowerPoint. I know how to create a training guide and whatever I'm working on. But then I know how to create a project. But then if I wouldn't have the contextual layer, it would take a lot of information retrieval. And that's why I would say that the context is the most important one. Of course, the content is important, but then the automations, they don't have any, basically, they don't make sense if you don't have the right content and the context. So that's why I have this. And have to say this, that I separate this. My persona is in my markku-ai digital twin. So that's kind of like the one part of the story. It interacts with my second brain, but it's a different element, so I'm not going to go into that. The parastructure, very worth looking into. I would say that I know a lot of people use this for their knowledge organization structure, how you store your projects, your areas of interest, your resources, how you archive things. And I would say that if there's one model to worth looking into, go Para, because Para with AI is really powerful. You combine it with your second brain's metadata model, and you basically have a very beautiful working model for your second brain. I'm totally a fan. I've tried different. I've done it all. I've had all of the different knowledge structuring models. I've tested them in my plus 58 years of my life, but Para is the best, at least for me, because it's really clean, it's understandable, and once you learn it, it makes you much more productive or happy if that's the objective. So how does this then work typically? I have an inbox, and this is really important that you understand that everything that I place into my second brain, it goes to a place which is called an inbox. It's actually a folder in my vault, so I can show it to you quickly. I have an inbox here, and this is basically all of the stuff that is right now hasn't been processed yet, scribe recordings, etc. So this is basically just a bunch of stuff that my notes that I'm working on. And once it goes into the inbox, then it becomes target to metadata injections. So you need to put some contextual metadata into the files in order for it to be part of your system. And the better you do it, the better the content becomes. And then this enables, for example, I'm just going to show you a couple of demonstrations. If I, for example, I'm creating this is from last couple of days ago. I'm creating a client calls me. We're going to do a workshop with AI capability development next week. Basically, I asked, can I record this? It goes into my second brain as raw data. Basically, just the recording is transcribed with a tool called Scribe. So basically, it becomes something in my inbox. It goes into my inbox, and what happens is that basically this is converted into text and some metadata is added to it. I use Claude, an agent driven by Claude Code. Basically, adds the metadata, reads the transcript, adds some keywords to it, and places it in the right part of my brain structure. So I don't have to do, I can do this manually, I sometimes do, but I've decided that it's easier for me to basically have it automatically, because I want to go into my brain through the client or the project or different paramodel topics. So this is what happens. It goes into the right folder. And then if I need something from that discussion, another skill reads the file and starts processing and, for example, creates a workshop or the materials. So basically everything comes from a call note converted into text, put into my second brain, different skills kick in, and then the output is a workshop. This is really cool. I have a video about it. I'm going to show it here quickly. So for example, I'm just showing this as a quick demo. I've used my second brain as the source. So basically, I've given an instruction to Claude to read 2 folders containing my brain content, my second brain content. So basically, you can see the metadata. You can see that there's also something going on. I gave Claude instructions to create a presentation on this topic using this data, future readiness, AI vulnerability, and this is for a management team meeting. I asked it to use the reference to certain parts of my brain, which are basically folders inside my knowledge base. And then I asked it to create as a PowerPoint presentation. And what Claude does, it asks me a couple of questions, basically just simple questions. I answer them, more details, and the output. It doesn't hallucinate, it's to the point, it's quite good quality content. And this is because it comes from my second brain. It's based on the metadata, it's based on my frontmatter content. It's based on my skills that I've designed. So basically, what you see is what you get. What you keep in your second brain, you get. And this is beautiful, how AI should be working and is working right now. In addition, of course, it creates me my speaker's notes. I don't use them that much, but then it also creates a workbook for the participants. All of these are based on my skills, but without the knowledge inside my second brain, it wouldn't be possible. So this is a good motivator. Keep your data in place. Maybe another one, I need to create a proposal. So I get a new lead, I get it into a commercial discussion, I need to create a proposal. I drop it in my inbox, my second brain processes it. It becomes a proposal job. So basically, an automation understands, okay, we need to create a proposal out of this. It's taking into the pipeline. Another agent wakes up, does some research, does some drafting, does some packaging, and basically I have a proposal ready to be sent by a human. And I could do it myself manually, but because I have my second brain, it's helping me to do more efficiently. I can go and work out at the gym or do some spinning or whatever I like to do. So this is really the main message to you, is that second brain without the human wouldn't work. And this is why we have to understand that this is really human and AI collaboration. And if you want to know more about this, I would say tip number 1, look at the paramodel, find some YouTube videos about it, why paramodel is actually quite powerful. Look into Obsidian. Obsidian is a very powerful tool, and it takes a lot of time to kind of like get to know it. But once you have enough content in it in Markdown format, you'll see the benefits. And once you give these, for example, AI's access to some of this content, the outcomes are really great. So this is basically what we talked about it in the webinar. If you're interested in hearing more about this, send me a message. Maybe I'll create a second webinar out of this and go deeper into the Obsidian world. But this is my second brain in brief. And I am Markku. So nice talking to you. See you later.